Okay, so now we're going to really kind of jump into the codes of delayed egress. I've been doing this since the 1991 timeframe, and delayed egress has always been a key part of doing it because we've started doing delayed egress in the 1990s as a big way to help deter theft within retail. Then we took it from there and we started going into a lot of the elderly care facilities over the years. What I want you to understand at this point when it comes to codes, and a lot of it has to deal with, we're legally responsible for knowing and abiding by the codes when we do the installation of these systems. And oftentimes you may come into jurisdictions that really don't care what you do for installations of delayed egress systems. They have no plans, no permit process, no testing process required to add delayed egress. However, as a licensed vendor, you are responsible for knowing and understanding the codes which are adopted in your area at that time. So this is a big responsibility. And some of you may be working under the 2012 delayed egress code sections right now. So we want to know and understand the basics, which is what we're going to walk through. Enforcement is up to the local AHJ, but you're responsible for knowing and understanding the codes. So with that, let's get started with the IBC 2012 delayed egress code section. It is found in chapter 10, 08.1.9.7 delayed egress locks. And it does say in the codes that they are meant to be approved and listed delayed egress system. But here again, I take it back to enforcement on your local jurisdiction. Do they want a plans and a permit process? Too many times I've been at a class and they said they don't care, we can put it in. They have no plans, no permit process, which I don't necessarily agree with when you're going to slow someone down from getting out of a building. But in up to 2012, they pretty much told you where you cannot add delayed egress. And we go back to the occupancy codes again. A, assembly. E, education. H, high hazard, areas where you cannot add delayed egress. Now, before 2012, when we talked about tying a delayed egress system into a fire alarm system, it was if they had it. In 2012, there we started looking at, you will now tie it into the fire alarm system, a building equipped throughout with a sprinkler system, a fire alarm system, a smoke or heat detection system within that building. So we started seeing a few changes in the verbiage. We've always had a standard of one delayed egress point in a path of egress, so just one 15-second delay to be able to get out of an opening. The system would unlock if I lost power to my fire alarm system or activation of my fire alarm system, release from a fire command center. And then obviously there's that initiation process. And it's really kind of fun because even in the 1990s when I was doing delayed egress, the standard was a 3-second nuisance alarm. So you push against the door or you hit the bar and it would scream at you immediately, but you had to hold it for 3 seconds to get you to that initiation of the full countdown to either 15 seconds or 30 seconds. Well, up to the code, up to 2012, the delay for a nuisance alarm was 1 second. But the standard for most AHJs was a requirement that you have a 3-second nuisance alarm that allowed someone to basically push against the door. It's going to scream at you, and it's either you continue to push it or you get off of it. But you have that nuisance alarm prior to that initiation of the full countdown of 15 seconds, in which it would then unlock that door and allow you to freely egress. Now, the other thing which has always been kind of a big question is, can that door automatically relock and reinitiate the delayed egress? And the answer to that is no. Once that system has been activated, to unlock, it stays unlocked until it is manually reset. And the big reason for that is, let's say we have a fire in a building and that door is activated, it unlocks, someone goes out the door and the door closes back up again. Is it going to start that 15-second initiation process over again? And the answer to that is no. Manual relocking only. So once it's activated, it unlocks, whether by fire alarm system or activation. It would have to be relocked manually. Now I'm going to tell you there are more and more situations we are coming into in which we are allowing for automatic relocking of the doors. And the only place where I've actually seen it approved and documented has been in an institutional facility. And the reason is I may have 10 to 15 to 20 of these delayed egress systems around my perimeter of my hospital. Upon fire alarm activation, they're going to unlock. But what happens when everything is cleared and gone back to normal? I may not necessarily have the staff to get people around to lock those doors up very quickly. Can I do an automatic lockdown on certain delayed egress doors? And the answer I would tell you through a variance is yes. You have to work with your local jurisdiction to figure out what you can do. Signage is always going to be an important part or aspect of part of delayed egress system. It's part of the hardware package that comes with it. What that sign says, whether you're going to push the door or pull the door, you need to understand what the requirements are, and you are legally responsible for knowing those basic codes. The basic codes for 2012 you're going to see are going to be very common to 2015 and 2018 and 2021 code series. But in 2015, we started to see the code change, and we'll be getting into that next. So with IBC 2012, we gave you the basis for delayed egress, basic configuration setup. And when we go from 2012 to 2015 IBC codes, the same basics apply, where we're looking at the system is tied into a fire alarm system, whether it being a sprinkler system, fire alarm system, heat or smoke detector, released by a remote command center if need be, loss of power. Those standards for delayed egress stayed the same. In 2015, we started seeing changes that were coming in. For me, I was in the transition of, I was still on the industry side, but I also went into, at that point, made my switch from the industry side over to ASSA ABLOY. But we started to see the changes that were coming out with 2015 IBC code, and we jumped on it. We were a heavy vendor for elderly care facilities, and what we were able to do is we took the provisions, which I'm going to talk about from 2015, and we took those to our local authorities having jurisdiction, the fire department, building inspectors, and stuff like that, and says, hey, this is what's coming out in IBC 2015. It has been adopted by the International Code Council already. Can we take provisions of IBC 2015, delayed egress locks, Chapter 10, Section 10, 1.9.7, and use them today, back in 2013. So the changes that came in 2015 are significant. The basics of manually resetting a door upon activation, still there. But I went from 1 second to 3 seconds for my nuisance alarm. So the code previously said 1 second for a nuisance alarm, now it says 3 seconds. But I'm going to take you back a little bit further, and I want you to keep in mind, you can only have one delayed egress system in a path of egress. One, up to 2015, one delayed egress system in a path of egress. Well, I want to go back into and take a look at institutional groups, group 1, 2, 3, and 4, which we talked about earlier from Chapter 3, institutional. Break those groups down. 1, alcohol drug rehabs, assisted living facilities, group homes, halfway homes, stuff like that. Group 2, foster care, detox facilities, hospitals, nursing homes, psychiatric hospitals. Group 3, correctional centers, detention, jails, pre-release, reforms, and prisons. And then Group 4, of course, adult daycare. Well, let's look at what happened in 2015. In 2015, I think the change happened, and this is only my opinion, I think the change happened because controlled egress is so strict. The requirements for controlled egress are so extremely strict that to take away some of the pressure on doing a controlled egress system, they allowed us to expand the capabilities of delayed egress systems. And the change that came in 2015 basically said that in an I2, foster care, detox, hospitals, nursing homes, psychiatric hospitals, and Group 3 in institutional, correction, detention, jails, pre-release, prisons, and reforms, I can now add a second delayed egress point in my path of egress. So I can have a 15-second delay, another 100 feet down the hallway or something like that. I can have a second delayed egress point in my path of egress. And what we were able to do with that is we would go to these elderly care facilities and say, hey, you've got a vestibule already. We can put a delayed egress on the inner door, gives you a 15-second delay. Someone comes to that door, they've got a 15-second delay. Then they're going to go down the hallway a little bit further on to the second vestibule door, which is a perimeter exterior door, and put a second delayed egress door. So I could put 2 points of delayed egress in one path of egress, not to exceed 30 seconds. That was a big change, because in Arizona, if someone walks away from an elderly care home, they're able to get out of that building. In the middle of summertime, there's a good possibility they may not survive in the heat if we cannot find them and bring them back as quickly as possible. That was the biggest change that came to us from the integration side, working with our customers to be able to add that 2 points of delayed egress. There again, it provided a more secure environment for their customer.